you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? New hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome, friends. You are tuned to KCAA Radio. Give me a couple days off. You got to retrain me. 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 100.6 FM, or you can listen from anywhere in the world at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reid, with my co-host, Dr. John Smith.
Hello.
Yeah. Now, you can follow us on Instagram or Facebook. Just look up Viewpoint with Father John. And if you miss an episode, in the search bar at YouTube, just put in Viewpoint with Father John, KCAA. And you can follow me on Twitter now. It's under Father John Reid. Father is spelled out, and Reid is, of course, the proper Irish spelling, R-E-I-D. Anything less would be uncivilized. So you can join there. You can contact me through all those different mediums. And if you want to contribute to the show, you can do that through viewpointwithfatherjohn.com. And it's you who help keep us on the air. All of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. I'm on a quest to help as many as possible and fully realize, I have trouble talking tonight, Doctor.
That's all right.
Fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing of false narratives and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations in realizing one's spiritual potential. And folks, I want to tell you about the place where I get all my pharmaceutical needs, and that's Claremont Pharmacy. They're in the beautiful city of Claremont on the corner of Indian Hill Boulevard and Arrow Highway. This establishment is owned by Dr. Nikki Ho. Hopefully she'll give me some speech medicine before the week's up. But seriously, if you're tired of getting treated like a number, where you just have a pharmacist that comes out or a pharmacist assistant and really they don't know anything about you and you don't get that sense of personal care, go see Dr. Nikki Ho at Claremont Pharmacy. You'll be glad you did, and tell her that Father John said hi. I just think the world of her. You know, when she first opened this pharmacy is when I started going to her. I had pharmacists on the other side of town, and I wasn't that thrilled. And when I started going to Nikki, she just really started taking good care of me. And I'll tell you, I've never regretted it. And there's times I forget things, and she is just really, really caring and takes care of the things that I forget. And I also want to tell you about a good place to get your hair cut. It's where I go. If you like the way I look, go where I go, which is Uppercuts Barbershop in Pomona. Now, that's on Foothill and Town Avenue. These are great guys. This is an old-fashioned barbershop, friends. So if you want to see a good old, they're young guys, but they have the old-fashioned way of cutting hair, and it's a neat place. You know, sit down for a little while, hang out with the guys, maybe watch a movie or two. But it's just a great place to go. And so I've been getting my hair cut there for a little while, and they're open again now. So that's why I can now tell you about them. They're very reasonable on their cuts, and so go see them. Tell them that Father John said hi. Tell them that you heard about it at this on this radio show, and they'll do you good. They'll do you really good. One last thing I want to tell you about before we go into the COVID numbers, and that's my friend Glenn Kirshner with Justice Matters. He has his program on YouTube called Justice Matters. Now, let me tell you about Glenn, and I want to make this clear. This is not a paid advertisement. I do this out of respect for Glenn because he's the real deal, and he really can back up what he says. You can fact check him, and you'll find he's absolutely on, just spot on. And he talks about the stuff going on, and from a non-political point of view, but from a Department of Justice point of view. He was a federal prosecutor for 30 years. He was a JAG lawyer in the United States Army for 6.5 years, and being that I was in the Army, I could tell you he joined the right armed forces branch. And but more than anything, he's a straight up. And I have so much respect for him. Now, here's the difficult part we got to do. And I'm sorry that we haven't been here for 3 weeks. The COVID hit the station, and the station did what they're supposed to. They went on automation while everything was sanitized, and which meant my show got canceled a couple times, but it was out of safety, so I'm not upset about it. And some of you know that Dr. John Smith and I have been doing a series, so we're going to do the last 3 weeks of that series tonight, next week, and the following week. And so I'm going to go through the COVID numbers. It's kind of gotten forgotten with what's going on. And so as of before the show tonight, and I get my numbers from Johns Hopkins University, so it's reliable numbers. The certified cases, verified cases of COVID in the United States right now is 21,567,444. Those are just cases. The deaths at this point, certified deaths, 365,102. Brothers and sisters, don't believe this garbage you're hearing on right-wing radio. They should be ashamed of themselves for what they're saying, and I'm ashamed of them. Look, they don't get paid more for putting COVID on a death certificate. You're not paid by the diagnosis. When a person dies, everything that was going on has to go on the death certificate. But they'll list what they believe is the major cause of the fatality. And I've been doing a lot of funerals for people who died of COVID. And a dear friend of mine, his whole family just tested positive for COVID. And these are young people, and we don't know if they'll survive or not. So please, get with science, not a political agenda. We're in this together. And even if you're not worried for yourself, wear a mask for somebody else. That's the American way to live. And aren't we supposed to all be Americans? Okay, having said all that, tonight my guest is my dear friend, the guy I consider my big brother, Dr. John Smith. And Dr. John Smith is a psychotherapist, a professor, and author of the book, The Authentic Man, A Guide to Happiness and Purpose. So, Dr. Smith, I'm glad you're here.
I am so glad to be back. I just, sorry, like you said, that we couldn't go straight through on our series together, but maybe fate brought us back when we really needed to be here the most, given everything that's been going on yesterday and even before, and things that'll probably be going on over the next several weeks. So thank you for having me here with you. I really enjoy it. So,
and I appreciate you driving tonight. But on the way home, can I get inside the vehicle?
Well, that's what the running boards are for. Huh?
Yeah. Well, I was running next to him.
You got to get your exercise somehow, right?
Yeah. Well, next time I need to be exercised, bring a priest.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I like that.
I'll be more in the spirit of it.
That's why he rides outside, folks. I got to listen to this stuff that he comes up with if he's inside. So
he makes me ride on a broom and hum the tune to Bewitched. But yeah.
I'll bet you there are people out there that you don't even know what Bewitched was or is. So
I just gave him the magic
that's right.
wave. They'll
it was
know
a
now.
great show in the 60s.
There's a reason we're starting it off a little light tonight, and that's because full of my mic here. Look, over the past 24 hours, we went through a horrible shock to our system, something that none of us ever thought we would see in our great country that we love so much. And that was an insurrection of the Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
And some people haven't found out yet that that wasn't the only insurrection, that this thing was so wide. There were several state capitals that were overran at the same time. This thing had been nationally coordinated. And I'm going to say something that's not politically correct, but it's the darn truth. If this would have been Black Lives Matter, you would have seen all kinds of police force reinforcement. You would have seen all kinds of people in handcuffs. Instead, they treated it like,
or worse.
yeah,
There would have been bloodshed more than there was.
right. And what they did yesterday, which I find appalling, and I've spent time in law enforcement, is they actually, some of the cops removed the barrier racks and let them in and guided them in the door, as though they were a high school group just having a tour. I don't get that. There needs to be some deep understanding of this. Now, I do know that they wanted to have the National Guard there, some of them, but the president denied them having that. Mike Pence finally had to call for National Guard. But the chief of the Capitol Police declined all the help that was offered him from the FBI, from ATF, from all these other places. Says, "Oh, we're fine." He marked it as a normal day, not all days off canceled. And so this isn't a political show, but we need to know about this.
Even I knew that it was not going to be a normal day. Weeks before, based on what was being said, it was basically, how could you not suspect it or prepare for it? It wasn't like it came out of nowhere.
Right. And so the reason I'm bringing this up is because a lot of people, including myself, have been unnerved by what we saw. We feel less safe than we've ever felt before. And I imagine a lot of people, and I suffer from PTSD, and I imagine a lot of my brothers and sisters who do as well, had a lot of buttons pushed over 24 hours. I was sharing with you, Dr. Smith, that I had horrid nightmares last night, and vivid.
Yeah.
Because it pushed some of the buttons from the PTSD that I deal with.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I think I'm not overgeneralizing when I say almost everyone has been affected by what's been going on in some way or the other. And if it wasn't what happened in the government yesterday, it's a COVID. So we're sort of under siege by a couple of things, and that's got everybody on edge and everybody reacting. But you said I've got PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, which means I've had some trauma or traumas in my life that have affected me, that are still haunting and affecting me, even though those traumas are over. My body and my mind and my spirit still react and respond to anything that is structurally similar. So today's trauma, or the trauma that exists today, the stress, the trauma, is going to trigger old stuff that may have been hidden, buried, and you may have even thought, hey, I've worked through this. I've talked about it, or it's over. And yet all of a sudden you're noticing that you're having nightmares, or you're reacting. They call it hypervigilance. You're looking over your shoulder. You're having snappy reactions. Your mood. You're grumpy. You're snapping back at people. You feel angry. You feel suspicious. You feel anxious. That's partly because those old traumas, those old wounds, are being reactivated.
I want to add one more analogy to it that someone I know presented me with. They said they feel like the old wooden airplanes that you get with the rubber band propellers, and that it's just winding and winding and winding until it won't wind anymore, and then it flies and then crashes.
Here's a way that I think many listeners, I describe it this way. Okay, so we all remember and know Christmas tree lights, right?
Yes.
So they're all wired on one circuit.
Yes.
So when you plug in the lights, hopefully they all light up, right? But what happens when one of them goes out? They all go out, right? Well, our mind organizes things on circuits similar to Christmas tree lights. So the thing that happened when I was 6, and the thing that happened when I was 12, and the thing that happened yesterday are all structurally similar in some way. They're shocks, they're traumas. So the mind puts them on the same circuit. So when something happens that triggers one of those Like yesterday, it not only lit up yesterday, but it powers up the whole circuit. So it's lighting up all of the other ones on the same circuit. Okay, so people are overreacting potentially, not because of just yesterday, but because all of their lights are activated and turned on.
Maybe I can go to Lowe's and get a new fuse for that one light bulb.
Perhaps. The good news is that with trauma, the good news is that if we clear the results of any one of those lights and we turn it off, like Christmas tree lights, the power to the circuit goes out, and so all of them go out.
Right.
Which is something new that we've discovered when we think about neuroscience and trauma. We didn't used to think that. We used to think that you have to go through and process every single one ad nauseum, and a lot of times that just makes things worse. So, but now we know that if we can clear one of those traumas, that often many of the other ones will kind of clear on their own, and we don't have to sit and talk about every single thing. We just have to identify one or two of those lights, and then the power goes out. So
analysts will still like to do the whole string of lights.
Right.
And I'm not saying they're bad for it. It's just, I guess it depends on the patient and what they're bringing to the session. And the reason I mention that is when you're going into treatment, you're going to have to find out what works for you. It's not a one-size-fits-all.
Correct.
And what Dr. Smith is talking about is a wonderful method. What analysts present, that's another method. I have my method that I use. The bottom line is to get the treatment. And if you find it's not working for you, then by all means, you can go to another analyst. Neither one of you are bad. No one's getting rejected here. Right. But speaking of rejection, we're up at our first commercial break, and Frank's going to give me a big rejection if we don't go to commercial break. So you're listening to Viewpoint with Father John, with Dr. John Smith and Father John Reid. We'll be back in 90 seconds.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org, www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
How you doing? This is Gary Garver. In today's society, the majority of people are not getting enough sleep. I know I'm not. If you're like me and having problems getting a good night's rest, whether it's health or stress related, I have a solution for you. South Pacific Sleep Lab. South Pacific Sleep Lab will do an evaluation of your sleep pattern and will provide a comprehensive study so you can start getting a restful, peaceful night of sleep. They take all types of insurance, which will cover your cost of the evaluation, and they will even provide transportation to their offices at no cost to you. For more information, contact Tony at 310-999-1887. That's 310-999-1887. Tony even stays awake all night, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so you can sleep better and rest easy. South Pacific Sleep Lab. Start feeling better and getting a great night of sleep today.
102.3 FM, K292 FQ, Riverside.
And welcome back. You're tuned to NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere in the world at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reid. And shout out real quick to the people listening around the world. You know, I thank you that you take the time to tune in, and sometimes you get the show through YouTube. But the notes you send me are heartfelt, and I really feel that you're part of our family, and so please continue to be in contact. And if I'm ever, when COVID's over, if I'm ever able to visit some of these places where you live, I would love to meet with you. And speaking of great things, I want to say hi to the best sound engineer in the business. Frank, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. How are you, Father John and Dr. John? And
All us Johns.
Always good when we see you. We have more Johns than the Boulevard. Always great to see you. And you know, we've all had a lot on our plates, and I'm glad to see you here and healthy. And
Me too.
We've missed you.
well, thank you. I'm glad to be back.
Good. Me too.
We're the three musketeers in here, and those of you who follow the show know that Frank's not just the chief engineer on this show; he's also family. Mm-hmm. He's part of the Reid family, and we just love him.
By the way, can you loan me $10, family? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, if you like Monopoly money. So, and my guest this evening, and actually my co-host.
I was about to ask you for $10, actually, so we got a problem here.
We do have a problem.
Wow. I can give you both a high five, and then you have 10. Anyhow, my co-host tonight, not just a guest, but my co-host is Dr. John Smith. Dr. John Smith is a psychotherapist, a professor, and the author of the book, The Authentic Man, A Guide to Happiness and Purpose. Now, you might ask, why is he co-host, not just a guest? Whenever I have to be off the show, he is my fill-in host. And for this series that we're doing, it was much more appropriate having co-hosts than a host and a guest, because he contributes everything and more than what I'm bringing to this thing. We're both trained in psychotherapy, and it's good to have two different points of view, because sometimes people think that every psychotherapist thinks the same as every other psychotherapist, and that's just not true.
Right.
And not all psychotherapy is made equal. There are some people who are good. There are some people, well, they got their license because they passed, the boards, but that's about it. They should be selling, Cracker Jack popcorn over at the mall instead. They'll hurt less people.
One of the things I was going to say right before the break, as we were talking about trauma and people being re-traumatized and such, is that if you're having these reactions that we're talking about, I can't overemphasize enough that you're not crazy.
Right.
And there is help available, and you go, well, I shouldn't need help, or I'm embarrassed to get help. Please don't not get help if you are having these. The sooner you get help and the sooner you get relief, you'll find that you'll be right back to where you need to be, maybe even better off. So it's not something that you do because you're crazy, mentally ill, whatever. We keep using a term, post-traumatic stress disorder. Yes, that's a diagnosis, but it's more common than you might think. It basically means something bad happened and you're still suffering and having effects from the bad thing or things that happen. That's all it is. It's just a category, it's a label, but it doesn't mean you're crazy. It means that you're hurting.
It's been my experience that most crazy people never question if they're crazy.
That's true.
It's the ones that question their sanity that shows pretty good mental health, because they're questioning, what's off right now, which means you have some self-awareness. And in therapy, my goal is to help you gain introspection, where you're able to see within yourself and find out what is healthy for you and what is not. And I want to make that real clear. What is healthy for you in there, not what's healthy for me. Right. And so I never tell a patient how they should, feel about something or what reaction they should have. In other words, we don't shoot all over them. Instead, I feel my job is to help them discover, as we say, uncover, discover, and discard whatever it is they need to uncover to be able to live a healthy life.
Right. Right.
What's your thought on that?
Yeah, well, and we started the show with this whole idea of we don't know who to trust, right? And so that already gives us anxiety because we are getting fed a lot of information, a lot of disinformation, a lot of wrong information. So we don't know what's real, what's truth, what's not real, who to trust. And I'm going to say this is that the person that you have to trust the most is yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, and understand that you've heard that saying, trust your gut. Well, so if your gut alarms are going off, it means there's something not right.
Yes.
And if you listen to what your gut is saying and not always listen to what your head is thinking, because your head is getting bounced around with all kinds of different information and people saying this is a fact and people saying this is true, and whatever you're reading, whatever you're watching, right now, don't believe a lot of anything unless you trust the source. And your best source of trust is your own gut reaction to something. So if you can trust that for a while, hopefully the truth, if there is such a thing anymore, will start to balance things out shortly.
And don't be afraid to fact check. I think many of you listeners trust me because before I come on air, I research and fact check everything. When I give you the COVID numbers, I get those from Johns Hopkins University. They're fact-checked by credible sources because friendship's given, trust is earned, and I hope I've earned your trust. A lot of you have shared with me that I have. The reason I have Dr. John Smith here is because when I fact-check him, the facts are there, and I trust him. He's proven to me he's trustworthy. And so I rely on him. That's why he's the only one, and this isn't a mutual admiration society, but the reason he's the only one I allow to fill in for me when I can't be here is because I trust him that much. And I think enough of you as our listeners to not, I wouldn't give you anything but the best.
Thank you.
And so that's why I bring in Dr. John Smith. He's someone that when I have questions, I turn to. That's how much I trust him. And I feel a little bit like Tom Selleck. I trust them. I think you can too. But he won't say a reverse mortgage, I promise.
No.
We're going to hear from NBC from that one. So with everyone being so on guard, I'm going to say something I'm hesitant to say. Some people think I'm joking. I'm not. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean there's not some people out there. And it's going to be important to find out what is real and what is not.
Right.
And right now, we don't know which of our neighbors are safe, which of our neighbors are not. And that really leaves, one, a feeling of isolation. And it does leave feeling paranoid. And then we're angry with ourselves saying we shouldn't be paranoid. And then we do the woulda, coulda, shoulda dance.
Right.
So could you address that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, I've been glued to social media all day, which is a bad thing to do. I've told you all many times not to do that, but I found myself I couldn't help it. It was the wrong thing to do. But I noticed as I was going through my news feed that there were a lot of people on there who were speaking about that I unfriended someone who I've known for 20 years because they were on the other side of whatever opinion they had. And it wasn't just one person, it was a lot of people.
Right.
And so what that tells me is that there is even a greater divide. And so it's like I'll talk to people and I'll get information from people that think like me.
Right.
And one of the ways I learn is to hear other people's opinions and viewpoints, even if I don't agree with them, because it helps me digest and think about what what's true, because my truth and your truth may be very different, but somewhere in the middle is the truth.
Right.
So if I start cutting myself off from other people and other people's opinions, then that puts me in a isolated, lonely place, which just fuels my distrust, my paranoia. If I think that's legitimate, my suspicion anyway, at least if it's not full-blown paranoia. So I think that we need to take a break.
Yes.
And sit back, observe, not judge.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Let's not cut off our best friend of 20 years because they think one way and we think another. All right?
Well, Mother Teresa said, when you judge people, you don't have time to love them.
Yeah, I just like the old saying, when I'm pointing one finger at you, there's three pointing back at me.
And one at God.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry,
So,
priest obligation.
Yes. So I'm just saying, hey, I don't know how this all will play out. I just know that if I continue to fuel my own anxiety, my own distrust, my own disconnection, then I'm just making things worse for myself or my family and potentially for everybody else. So the only person I can control right now is me.
Yes, absolutely. And, going along those lines, we have a ghost come by.
Yeah.
Hi, Casper. But along those lines, if we can learn how to get who's right and into what's right, because nobody owns the truth. Nobody owns the truth. And, a point of view is a view from a point.
Yeah.
And so if we can look at it that way, and we may not ever agree on something, but we can at least try to see what the other person might be seeing and find out, why do you believe this?
Well, a wise man that I know who's sitting in close proximity to me right now showed me a piece of paper, or actually it was a card. And he held up the card and he said, describe that to me. What do you see? And I described the card and what I saw on it, whatever. And he said, you're wrong. And he flipped the card over, and what he was looking at on the back of the card was something completely different than what I was looking at in the front of the card. And we discussed how that little exercise was a good way to say, hey, my viewpoint, what I'm seeing is different than yours. We're both right.
Yes.
And we're both wrong.
Yes.
And that, I think, if you think of it that way, it's like we gotta go there. We gotta get to that spot now where we just say, okay, I don't agree with what your viewpoint is, but but I have a different one, but it's not necessarily that I'm right and you're wrong. It's that we're both right and we're both wrong.
Exactly. And we will remain that way until we turn the card around and take the risk of seeing it from each other's point of view. And we may not like what we see, but at least we will know what one another sees.
I was taught, in my counseling training, we learn what's called active listening. And so one of the things that we learn, one of the little skills we learn is called reflecting, right? So what I heard you say is, and then I summarized or say what I heard you say, and you have an opportunity to say, yeah, that's right. You heard me. You understood me. Or you can say, no, that's not exactly what I said or what I meant, rather than, I don't agree with you, you're wrong.
Yeah.
There's a difference. So I think, obviously not everybody has learned how to actively listen and how to reflect, but that's a good skill to learn because it's a good way in general to communicate.
It's very helpful in marriage. And when we can, and again, it's one of those things you don't have to agree, you just have to understand.
Yes.
And you're allowed your own opinion, but if you don't even understand where the other person's coming from, you can't build the bridge to meet in the middle. And that's the material we use to build the bridge. And when we build the bridge, we're both a little safer because we're not drowning in the water.
Right. Well, and we're not putting up a wall, we're crossing a bridge, or we're building a bridge, because if we don't have a bridge, then there's something separating me and you.
Yes. And all we can do is throw rocks at each other.
Right.
And when we do that, everybody gets hurt.
Right.
There's never a resolution. And not only do both people get hurt, but at some point the relationship gets killed.
Mm-hmm. And that's true with friendships. It's true with marriages. It's true with just about any type of relationship. And what is a relationship? It's something, it's a connection between me and you.
Yes.
Or me and a group, or me and, right? And that connection, has to be, we have to nurture that connection.
And it has to continue that way if it's going to remain healthy. I mean, what happens if you never go to the dentist? Things start rotting.
You just reminded me I got to go to the dentist on Monday. Oh my gosh. Okay.
That's
Thanks.
That's saying a mouthful.
Yeah.
Thank goodness it's still saying a mouthful.
Thanks for that.
But you get the idea behind it. If we don't keep it current, the situation becomes morose, and it's infected.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty soon gangrene sets in emotionally, and now you're having to cut off parts of your life.
Ooh, I like that. Emotional gangrene. I'm going to have to use that. I'm going to steal that.
For a nominal fee.
Thanks.
Remember, you only have to give credit 3 times, and then it's yours.
Okay.
Well, we're at our next commercial break, and my co-host this evening is Dr. John Smith. You're listening to Viewpoint with Father John, and we'll be back in 90 seconds.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
Are you looking for health care using a non-toxic medical approach to regain your health?
My name is Gilberto Alvarez, MD. My 40 years of experience using non-toxic approaches to health problems, including cancer, allow me to provide you with effective, proven, safe treatment for your health.
Call 619-405-5199. That number again, 619-405-5199.
The Stella Maris Clinic in Tijuana, Mexico, 5 minutes from the U.S.-Mexico border.
And welcome back, friends. You are tuned to NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, where you can listen from anywhere around the world at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reid. My co-host this evening is Dr. John Smith, a psychotherapist, author, and professor. And remember, you want to get his book. It's an excellent book. You'll probably find it close to my book. His book is The Authentic Man, A Guide to Happiness and Purpose. Brothers and sisters, I've read that book a number of times, and I always get, there's some little leprechaun that runs in there and puts something new that I never saw before. How he keeps the typeset just right, I don't know, but he does. And
that's good.
But any book worth reading, you'll have that kind of effect, because you're going to be reading with different eyes every time you go back.
I appreciate that. I will say that while it's a book about men, it's not just for men, it's for men and women. So I would urge you, women, to buy it as well as men. It's not just a book for men.
And I've given that book, a copy of that book, to some of my female clients because I thought it was so important what they read there that they would identify with, but also understand a little bit more of the man that they are in relationship with.
Exactly. And yet there's some things in there, while I targeted men, there's some things in there that are sort of universal. So it's helpful for all of us. But yeah, that's, I think, something important to know.
And since you're already buying books, why miss out on buying my book, Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me, which is available on Amazon or Barnes & Noble and all online bookstores that are worth buying from. If they don't have it, you're shopping at the wrong store. They're letting you down. I'm telling you, baby, go to a class operation. You know, and so I want to get into some things to help people or next week, and we're going to be doing this 2 more weeks after tonight to deal with more aspects of what we're talking about because it's just too much to handle in one sitting. If you can be kind to yourself, you don't have to figure this out all at once. You're not stupid. You're not crazy. Just overwhelmed.
Yeah, that's a great.
You know? And what do we do when we're overwhelmed? We rest. You know, friends of mine have said often, if you come to a crossroads and you don't know which way to go, stop. Rest until you get an indication which way you want to go.
Let me add to that, rest and reflect.
Yes. Yes.
Because I think that's important. Sometimes we just need to rest. Our body and our brain needs rest. And sometimes we need to stop, rest, and reflect and think about, where are we going? Where have we been? What's the best way to go? What's the best direction to go in? Sometimes if we just get on automatic pilot, that's not always the best choice.
Yeah, and we've reached a point in our society that we forget a very important concept, which is, how does it feel? How does it feel? Because sometimes our feelings, that gut feeling, is a good indicator. Not always, but a good number of the time. And if we're constantly turning off red lights, covering up red flags, then we're not paying attention to something that could be saving our life emotionally.
Right. Well, I always tell people that while we don't like to necessarily feel, especially feel bad,
right,
our gut isn't designed to cause us to feel bad because it wants us to.
Right.
It's designed to cause us to feel uneasy or uncomfortable or whatever because it's trying to get us to do something, or it's trying to warn us of danger. And unfortunately, because we're human, we have the capacity to disregard or override what our gut is telling us. If I was a rabbit and my gut was telling me there was danger, the rabbit isn't going to stick around to go, I'd rather just sit around and eat that carrot because something's going to eat it. But unfortunately, humans have this capacity to think about things and analyze things and override or disregard the gut or not take it into consideration. And that's usually when things go wrong. Okay, things go wrong because of people not listening. So if my gut and my head are in sync and saying the same thing, hey, that's the right thing to do.
Right.
If my gut is saying one thing and my head's saying another, I usually recommend listening to the gut, but that's up to you.
Yeah, and the worst thing that could happen, it could be a bad decision. So what? You can come back from it. I live by the philosophy that I reserve the right to change my opinion tomorrow based on new information. And I may know something tomorrow that I didn't know today. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I thought this yesterday, but with this information, this makes more sense. Don't be afraid to change your mind. part of therapy and healthy therapy is learning when it's time to change your mind at the appropriate time. Now, we're not talking about just going in and changing everything for the sake of changing everything, but when it's indicated, this way might be a little healthier road. This one might have less pitfalls.
Well, usually people wind up in my office because they're stuck.
Yes.
They're stuck in a pattern of thinking and believing. They're stuck in a pattern of feeling, or they're stuck in a pattern of behaving that at some point in time was adaptive. It had a purpose. It worked, right? Even though it might have eventually then now later on it's become maladaptive, or it isn't working. It's hard to change old patterns.
Yes.
It's like an old habit. It's hard to change. Yet, as you said, with new information or new skills or new learning, our mind is actually capable of updating itself very quickly. It doesn't necessarily take years and years and years to change a belief, a way of thinking, or change a way of feeling, or even change a behavior. But you have to be open to new things.
Well, the way I was taught is that crisis time is awakening time. We find new solutions for old situations, and the crisis gets us there. But we have to be willing to let go of some things through that. To give the example, many of us have been on the curb after a rain and the water's going through the gutter, and we want to jump over the water to get past it onto the street, and we don't want to wind up in the water. But when we jump, we take all this baggage with us, and what happens? The baggage and our bodies and everything wind up in the water, and we get soaked. So then we come to the situation again, and we learn that in order to bridge that gap, we have to let go of some things. So when we jump, we let go of some of this baggage, and we soar across and we land on the safety of the other side. But before we get to that other side, there's a place in between the curb and the street that's called nowhere. And we have to be willing to be nowhere for a little while so we can complete the experience, bless it, and go on. And that nowhere could be scary.
Absolutely. Well, and that's when I let go of something that I know, even if it's not a good thing or it's not adaptive anymore, it's maladaptive. When I let go of that thing, I am in this zone of uncomfortableness. I know what I know, and I don't know what I don't know, and a lot of times that nowhere is what keeps me hanging on is the fear of the unknown. And if I go, but folks, change does not happen. You can't carry that with you into the new way of thinking, the new way of behaving, the new way of feeling. And I spend a lot of time with people who are holding back, letting go, and they can't understand why they continue to feel bad, but I just say they're comfortably uncomfortable.
Yes, and when if you're not willing to do the process and you just jump out there with no direction, that could be hard as well. It reminds me of this Italiano airliner, and they're going from LaGuardia to New York, and they're in the air for a little while, and you hear the whoosh of the PA coming on, and the Italian pilot comes on and says, "Hello, this is your pilot, and I have some good news, and I have some bad news. I'm going to give you the bad news first. Announcement number 1, we're lost. I have no idea where we're going. Now announcement number 2, we're making damn good time."
I laughed at that. Now he's going to do more. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have laughed.
You're caught now.
Yeah,
You're like a trout on a hook.
I'm stuck now.
Yeah. But that's really, and I'm always cautious of a therapist that doesn't have a little bit of humor.
Yeah.
Now, if they're just telling jokes through the whole thing, then you're just going to see a clown. and you don't need that. But sometimes we have to take a little break with a little humor. But there's a point to that joke, and that's when we just jump out there with no instruction. We may be making good time, but we don't know where the hell we're going.
Right.
And we need to have a destination.
Absolutely. I even use that analogy. I say, before we do anything, if we're going to go on a vacation, what's the first thing we have to decide?
Where are you going to go?
Where we're going, a destination. Can't plan our route and our itinerary, in other words, how we're going to get there, if we don't know where we're going.
Right.
A lot of people do that backwards. They start coming up with all kinds of plans and ideas, and yet they don't have a destination, so how do they measure their progress? I don't know. How do I know if I'm on my way there, or how do I know when I get there if I don't know when I'm going? So otherwise I'm just frantically doing things without any sort of purpose or direction.
Well, that's why it's a common tool at the beginning of therapy to ask, what is it you would like to get out of therapy?
Right.
And then, in my case, every few months I like to revisit that and say, this is where we are now. Where do you want to continue to go? What are the benefits you are seeking at this point? Because they might have changed from when you first walked into the door, because now you know a little bit more.
Right.
And then we can plan out that a little bit, but that's not the final to end all.
Right.
So,
well, and it's good, if I know where we're going and you know where we're going, then we both can see how close we are, and we'll both know when we get there. So then it's time to end. It's like, hey, okay, we got there. Is there something new, or are we there?
yeah, healthy, in my mind, healthy therapy is teamwork.
Yeah.
Not one person telling you, you need to do this, you need to do that, this is where you should be going. No. What is it you want to accomplish?
Exactly.
And let's see how I can help in that process, laying the groundwork. And sometimes we might find that there's a detour that we need to take, but we can take it if we're working as a team.
Right.
And we're trusting each other.
I think the official word these days is called collaboration. It's a collaborative effort. It's you and me.
And synergy.
Yes, those are our buzzwords. We'll be synergistically collaborative. How's that?
I better take some Metamucil for that.
That one, yes. So yeah, I mean, we're kind of bouncing all over with these things, but I think it's important to understand that we're all going through a process, and of course, we're all dealing with whatever's going on. Again, whether it's COVID, whether it's being stuck in with my family and the stress of being around kids and being cooped up with my spouse 24 hours a day, and not being able to go out, not being able to go to the restaurants, not being able. So that's stressful, and then what's going on in the world is stressful, and so how we cope with that, how we deal with it is very, very important, and that's what we hope to offer you in this series, are ideas about how to cope, strategies about how to cope, and what's healthy and what's not.
Yeah, and one of the things that I see a lot of people have appropriate stress with is when you're walking around outside trying to do things and you're trying to be responsible, and you have people who are refusing to wear masks.
Yep.
Now, of course, the first obvious thing is to walk away from them and don't get in an argument with them, because now you're passing the germs back and forth, and the louder it gets, the more germs that are being passed back
Right.
and forth. And make sure that the people in your circle are educated, because we're not going to educate the whole world.
Right.
But we can practice safe population.
Sure. And like I said, truthfully, the only person I can control is me.
Mm-hmm.
So I can get mad at somebody for not respecting what I want them to do, and I could make them do it by force, but that's just making a problem. So I can only do what I can do for me.
Right. And lead by example.
Right.
You know, as that song that we learned in church, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me.
That's the one.
That's the one, with my dart gun.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, we're coming up. Well, we have about 30 seconds there, Frank. How are we doing? 1 minute. 1 minute.
What we could do with 1 minute. Oh my goodness.
Not at my age.
Yeah. Well,
I'm
you
good
know,
for 30 seconds.
we're real excited to be able to, you know, to offer you some humor, but also some good information, I hope. So please come back and visit. We'll be back here next week.
And be sure to buy Dr. Smith's book, The Authentic Man, A Guide to Happiness and Purpose. And you've been listening to Viewpoint with Father John. If no one has told you this week that they love you, let me be the first, because I really do. And I appreciate the benefit and the honor that you give me by tuning in. We'll be back next week. God bless.